And again, the 4-week countdown continues today. And some people have already voted absentee, by the way. In Idaho, absentee ballots have to be requested. They don't just mail them out as a matter of convenience. And so with that in mind, we noticed a take on Twitter over the weekend claiming those requests for absentee ballots were coming overwhelmingly from Republican voters. More registered Republicans were asking for an absentee ballot than registered Democrats, we were told, at a 2-to-1 pace. That tweet went on to use that number to call out all the calls for election integrity and all those who claim without any basis of fact absentee voting is rife with voter fraud, implying if more Republicans are voting absentee where most of those voter fraud claims were coming from, well, they must still believe in the integrity of Idaho's elections, right? Okay, so putting that part aside, we wanted to know if that claim was true, that twice as many Republicans plan to vote absentee this November. So we asked the Secretary of State's office to see what they're seeing. And yes, they are seeing twice as many Republicans request an absentee ballot this election cycle than Democrats. A little more than 50,000 to a little more than 22,000. Unaffiliated voters are also requesting absentee ballots, by the way, as you can see, so are the Libertarians and Constitutions. However, it's all about the context, says Chief Deputy Secretary of State Chad Houck, because you see those numbers there on the right, the bigger numbers and percentages, that's where the nuance lives. It's based on a percentage of registered voters, of which Republicans outnumber Democrats in Idaho by a 4-to-1 margin. So it's actually opposite.
So in that regard, take it against the 130,000 registered voters on the Democratic side, you've got about a 17% uptake rate on absentee ballot requests, while on the Republican side, that number is only 8.7. Roughly 50,000 out of the 577,000 registered voters on the Republican side.
So you can see it's not really kind of like 2-to-1 in that regard. It's just based on a percentage. You take that away, then yeah, it is 2-to-1. But that's for the whole state. What about the state's most populated county? Well, that trend seems to be the same in Ada County. More Republican voters have requested absentee ballots, nearly 19,000 to a little more than 10,000. But based on that percentage we just talked about of how they registered to vote, it still leans Democratic. But just barely in Ada County, 18% to 13%, not the 2-to-1 that we see statewide. However, a lot more people are choosing to vote absentee this November than, say, back in 2018. Ada County Elections Office tells us they've seen a bump in nearly 10,000 requests over 4 years ago. You could attribute that to a couple of things, more people moving in or whatever. But with the biggest increase coming from Republican voters, that's about a 10% jump. And they say some of that could be because a lot of candidates are choosing this turn to include a request form for an absentee ballot with their mailers. So yes, more Republicans are asking to vote absentee this election cycle, but likely because there are 4 times as many Republicans registered to vote in this state. Regardless, according to the Secretary of State's office, it's still about 10% of the registered population in Idaho that still has faith in the absentee system. That's a number that hasn't changed much over the years, but it still can. The last day to request an absentee ballot is October 28th.